huge news out of the South African chess community today, as for the first time ever, a South African player has beaten a reigning world number one. And that player is none other than FM Matfey Rogov, 18 years old, from Cape Town, South Africa. And of course he took down Magnus Carlsen in last night's Title Tuesday. But before we look at the game, I just want to share with you guys a funny segment from the Title Tuesday commentary.
Wow, all right. Well, we have Matfey Rogov joining us on camera, 18 years old, and he is very good in online blitz chess with a rating of well above 2,800.
He's got Magnus's hairstyle as well.
That's well spotted.
That's got to be worth at least 150 rating points.
So as you can see, the commentators said Matfey gains 150 elo just for having Magnus Carlsen's hairstyle. And I actually asked Matfey what he thought about this comment in the WhatsApp group for the top South African chess players. And he stated that when he goes to the barber, he uses a picture of Magnus Carlsen as a reference for what haircut he wants. So that's a pretty cool story. But okay, let's look at the game. So Magnus starts with c4, the English opening, and we see e5, the main way to counter the English. g3, knight f6, bishop g2, and now we see c6. Black is trying to play d5 and get a big center. Knight f3 happens. e4 attacking the knight, knight to d4, and we see queen to b6 targeting the knight on d4. Magnus defends us with e3, and after d5 we are going to see some slight problems around this white king. Magnus in this position should have taken the opportunity to castle, but he didn't do that and he played d3. And after takes bishop a6. Now you'll see this bishop on a6 is going to be preventing Magnus from castling for the rest of the game. We saw queen to d4, and I really love Matfey's next move. He has an opportunity to trade queens, but he said no. I'm not going to trade queens. Your king is stuck in the center. I'm going to keep the queens on with bishop to c5. Magnus now played queen to e5 check, and the best move here was actually just to drop the bishop back, but Matfey played king to f8. Now we see bishop to d2, and Magnus is actually fully sacrificing a pawn here, but it would be a very risky idea to take this pawn because after rook to b1, looks like white is getting a massive attack on the black king. So Matfey instead plays rook to e8, attacking the queen, and after queen to f5 we see rook to e6. Now the point of rook to e6, Matfey just wants to play g6 and king g7 and get his rook out, but he cannot do that right now because his knight would be hanging. So we see rook to e6, and here Magnus plays king to d1. So this is a little bit of a strange move. I'm not really sure what the idea is. On the Title Tuesday commentary, David Howell suggested a mouse slip, that Magnus maybe wanted to castle, and instead he slipped with these mouse and played king to d1. But either way, we see bishop to e7, bishop to f1. Magnus is desperately trying to get rid of this very good bishop on a6. g6, attacking the queen. Queen goes back to c2, and now we see this beautiful move, knight to g4, threatening knight f2 with the fork. And look at this, Magnus plays knight to a4, but is in this position that Matfey Rogov calculates something actually insane. He plays knight takes f2, and you may be asking, what if Magnus plays king to e1? Now he's attacking the knight and the queen. There is a crazy checkmating sequence. If the king goes to e1, Matfey would now play rook takes e3 check, and this rook can never be taken because the queen will take back and it's just going to be checkmate. So after king to e1, rook takes e3. What if the king takes this knight on f2? Now you will see the move rook to e2, double check from the queen and from the rook. And after king to f3, rook f2, king g4, bishop c8 is checkmate. I hope you guys can follow along with that. Unfortunately, I can't put it on the board because chess.com does this weird thing where they change the color of the board when you analyze. So I'm sure you guys could follow along though. So Magnus cannot play king to e1, and he instead plays king to c1. But now Matfey is just up a full pawn and simply plays queen to b7, getting out of the attack on his queen. Now we see the move rook to g1. Magnus saves his rook in the corner, and knight to e4. Matfey just puts his knight on a beautiful central square. Bishop to c3 happens, which looks kind of scary, but Matfey just gets rid of this bishop and puts his bishop on f6, where it is going to have beautiful control of this long diagonal. Queen to a3 check happens, and we see bishop to e7. Now king cannot go to g7 because knight c5 would be a deadly fork winning a piece. So we see bishop to e7, queen to c3, bishop to f6, and here the moves are repeated. Now Magnus did have a chance to take a draw by playing queen to c3, which Matfey would have responded with bishop to f6, and there would have been a repetition draw. But Magnus here in this position saw that Matfey only has 39 seconds left, so he decided to go for the win with knight to c5, which is a fork, but Matfey was able to chop this knight off, and after queen takes, play king to g7. Now we see queen to c3, rook to f6, and we see the move g4. So g5 is a massive threat, which would just win the rook straight up. So Matfey has to deal with that, and he does so by playing h6. And here we see h4. So once again threatening g5 to win the rook, and there's only one way to stop this, which is pawn to g5, which is very risky. Magnus now plays pawn to g3. He wants to give a square for his king so he can bring his rook out, simply. We see pawn to c5. Matfey is desperately trying to break this pin on his rook. We see queen to e5, threatening the pawn on g5. Queen to b6, defending the rook on f6. Pawn takes g5, pawn takes g5, queen takes g5, king to f8. Now we see bishop takes a6, queen takes a6, queen takes d5. And in this position, for all money, you would put all your money on Magnus Carlsen for one reason only. Look at the time. Matfey Rogov has 16.8 seconds and Magnus Carlsen still has 2 minutes. But Matfey is a master at bullets. If you look here on his profile, he has a bullet rating of 3000. So we see the move rook to h2, which has a very big threat, which Magnus Carlsen just actually ignored, and in this position Matfey was able to get a checkmate into starting with queen to a3, and next move queen to g2 would be checkmate. But this position is actually completely winning for black. There's so many threats that are in the position, and very well played to Matfey, and I'll see you guys in the next video.